Just take a step back and share with the audience, for people who are just getting up to speed. I know most people here know the story, but just to honor the victims and remember the 10. Let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, so my father initially, as far as we know, we might have to rewrite every textbook, okay, guys? So mine too, all right? So where we're at right now, in '74, my father broke into the Otero family home and he murdered a father, a mother, and 2 children, 11 and 9, Joseph Otero, Julie Otero, Josephine Otero, and Joey. Then he murdered Catherine Bright and he attempted to murder her brother Kevin. Then at the end of '74, he wanted attention. It's important to know my father is a sexual sadistic psychopath. He's a narcissist and he's a pathological liar. So that is what we're tackling still today when I go in to see him. So he contacts the media, he starts playing games. This is 4 years before I'm born, and he gives himself the name BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill. Then in '77, he murders a mother, Shirley Vianne Relford, in front of her children. Then he murders Nancy Fox, a young woman, while my mom was pregnant with me. Then he has a gap, and he calls it busy chasing Kerri and keeping her alive years. Then in '85, he murders Maureen Hedge, a widow that lived down the street from me, around the corner from my grandparents. I was 6, I have memories. When the FBI knocked on my door in 2005, I said Maureen Hedge hadn't been solved. I turned my father in within an hour of speaking to the FBI on that one. They had not arrested him on that one. He murdered Vicki Wegerle, a mother, in front of her young child in '86. He literally went back to work at ADT and came home and had dinner with my family that night. Then in '91, he murdered Dolores Davis, a grandmother. Now, we all know collectively we thought that was it. Now we are not so sure.
And so what happened earlier this year? You got a phone call?
No, it started with Fox News. So in January, I was blowing up, due to Kohberger, and my life was just completely altering. And my father then starts to contact media, and he says, hey, I'm being investigated by Osage County, Oklahoma on a cold case, Cynthia Don Kinney. She went missing in June of '76. She was at a laundromat working for her family, and she disappeared, and no one has seen anything or heard anything. It's been almost 50 years that she's been missing. So he tells the media I'm being questioned on this, and of course I am under the impression, like the rest of the world, top minds, criminologists, that it was only the 10. I had been told by the FBI, KBI, everybody, 18 years, only the 10, only the 10. And I would ask sometimes, I'd have night terrors about certain things, and I would go to the law enforcement and they would go, no, it's only the 10, only the 10. And so I literally was in media from like January to May, and I get hit by trolls now, and they're like, well, you said that it didn't fit his MO and it's not him. And I go, guys, it's September now, it's not January. Like, stop throwing my words back at me from 9 months ago.
And years later, right?
Years later.
And these names that we're going to talk about here today, no names that you had ever heard of before, thought of before?
No, and the reality is I wasn't born to '78.
Right.
And so I obviously would not have memories from '76.
Right. But these names weren't these weren't cases that have been brought up later to you.
No, not Cynthia Kinney and then Shauna Beth Garber. So I was saying, okay, it doesn't fit Dad's MO. We didn't know he had done breaking and enterings, home invasions, used the homes for covers for like most of his murders, and well, all of his murders, right? All of them were home invasions, and 2 he had removed the bodies to change the MO. Those 2 were by my house. And so I said, well, this doesn't fit an abduction in the middle of the day. And then in May, we found out that he was being investigated on Shauna Beth Garber. She was found murdered in October of '90 in Missouri. And when I went and looked at those photos, I just sort of ripped inside again, like 2005.
Now, let's stop there for a second. When you looked at those photos, how did you see those photos? Who showed them to you?
Actually, again, my father was in the news on Shauna.
Right.
And I was being contacted by media very quickly to comment. And I have CPTSD, I'm in trauma therapy still, always. And I had a very bad trauma day. And I did do a little bit of on-record commenting. And I went to go look it up. So now I'm having to Google cases that could belong to my father. That's my reality. And I see photos that were public of her bondage. Very graphic photos of her remains, what was tied around her, multiple layers. Very interesting bondage materials like a paracord, that's like a parachute type cord. And that's when I kind of ripped. It was like I was back in '05 saying, hey, Mrs. Hedges' murder wasn't solved. BTK cut his phone lines. He was gone that night. He was at a scout camp. I slept with Mom. There was a thunderstorm.
Wow.
And it was that same ripping. And that's when I reached out to McDonald County, Missouri. And I said, hey, do you need help on Shauna Beth Garber because of the bondage? And they got a hold of me. And then the next thing I know, I'm in California for work. And I'm literally rerouted to Oklahoma. And I go in with Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, with McDonald County and all active law enforcement, people that are now on the task force. And we sat down and we had a long talk. And they opened up all my dad's records from before he was arrested. And they showed me pages and pages and pages of project notes.
And for people who don't know what project notes are.
So my father calls people that he stalks and trolls projects. He gives them names. So say speculative somebody lives in a greenhouse, they might be Project Green. And he has recreated these in a list in like Dr. Ramsland's book, but we think he's mixed it all up and played games there. Mm-hmm. But if you take him back to the original materials from before he was arrested, some of this stuff is very decades old, and he collected it all, saved it in what we call the BTK binders. He was literally doing this work inside notebooks at the compliance office where he worked right down the hall from law enforcement. So they bring me into these notes, and we're flipping through, and there's codes and things. I'm pulling out really like brand new info to me, really extremely personal, impactful victim stuff to me in there that was new to me. And then the next day I go see my dad in prison.
So that's 18 years, is that right?
Yeah, it was 18 and a half years since I had seen him. So.
And that is just so everybody here knows, that is just a few months ago. This has just happened. This is brand new. This is something that has been tucked away for years. Therapy, relationships with your family and your friends, just trying to get through these years. And now here you are back in this situation and you're helping. And it's something that you've been talking about on your podcast with her and your experts.
Yeah, I think one of the really important things to note here is that aside from Kerri, I only know of one other family member of a notorious serial killer who speaks publicly at all. Kerri is really the only voice of this side of the crime, and it's the fact that she has the courage, and she talked about trolls, and every time she comes on our show, 97%, I would say, is positive reinforcement and people, applauding and lauding the work that she does, but there's always that small percentage that kind of go after her for speaking publicly. But without Kerri doing this, we would never know what it is like for the family members of these notorious serial killers. And so one of the things that I was really curious about, and I asked Kerri about on our podcast, Surviving the Survivor, is what was it like to see your dad after 18 years? And Kerri, you can answer it obviously better than me, but it was emotional. And, there's the serial killer, but he's also her father. I mean, what was it like for you?
Yeah, so I actually shared for the first time about meeting my father on Joel's show because I need safe spots, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is a safe spot. I feel safe here. So in June, I went through my dad's project notes. I looked at bondage photos. My dad recreated crimes. After he murdered people, he would recreate his own self-bondage. There's some that are public. There are a massive amount, guys, that are not public, that are in evidence. I was in bondage drawings. There have been a few public, and we're going to get to that here in a minute. There is a very substantial amount of drawings of individual possible victims or fantasies. We're trying to sort it out that are not public. So, like, the reality is we're going to be in this as a task force and as law enforcement and as a family, and I mean as a family for a very long time to come. So when I went into the prison the next day, I rode up with law enforcement in a law enforcement vehicle. It was fun. Like, we used lights and did what we wanted on country roads. Wow. So that was fun. And then we went into the prison, and I literally would not have been able to do it if it had just been for me. I only went because of these unsolved cases, right? Because of Kenny's family and Garber's family and all these other families. Like, we don't know right now, guys. We're in the finding out stage, okay? But, like, I wouldn't have gone in on my own. But I went in with prison investigators, and I had to go in on my own, but I went in with them, and so they're armed and, like, my muscle. So, like, we just went in and they wheeled him in a wheelchair. So my dad was 5'11". Now he's 5'3". He's lost 9 inches to scoliosis. My math might be off.
What was going through your mind? Let me just hit pause on that. What is going through your mind when you see him after 18 years? In the description you just gave, what's happening inside your body?
Well,
your heart racing.
I didn't know if I would be able to do it. And before I went in, like, okay, here's a trick, women. If you need a break, just go to the bathroom. And, like, if you're with men, you just go, I need to go to the bathroom, and they'll leave you alone for, like, 5 seconds. So, like, I went into the bathroom and, like, had a little panic attack. And then, like, I was like, okay, do your therapy, do your grounding, do your anchoring, and go do your job. And so I had to put on, like, that hat of like, being a witness, like, working with law enforcement, trying to help, right? To assist law enforcement as a witness, not to go in as somebody angry, mad, you know, sad, what if, what's your deal, Dad? Like, I just had to go in calm. And so when he saw me, he was, like, absolutely sobbing. It took him a minute. He didn't recognize me. It had been 18 years. I think he thought I was my mom, Paula. He was like telling me later, he's like, you're channeling your mom. And then they just wheeled him over. So he's in prison garb, and he's shackled with like handcuffs. And he's in a wheelchair the whole time, but I'm able to hug him before and after I see him. Like, we pretty much were just dad and daughter. But when I sat down the first time, I had a reunion with him, and then I kind of just switched. And I said, well, Dad, I'm here on behalf of these families. I'm working with law enforcement. We need to have a serious talk. And that's when we started talking about what was going on now.
Right.
And that's been going on since I've gone in, since, like, I made it clear to him after the first hour and a half. Like, he is sharp as a tack. He was running me down every rabbit hole you can imagine. He draws me maps, he makes notes, and all of this goes into evidence, okay? And at the end, I go, Dad, like, we talked about all this stuff. He had lowered that mask. It was the first time he had been BTK with us.
And what do you mean by that? Did you see a switch in his face?
Well, it was like, the whole time I was growing up, he was Dad, but then sometimes he had this confusing component, right? Like, he would come home and be verbally abusive, or he was physically abusive towards my brother, or he was emotionally controlling. It was like, sometimes I didn't know who was coming home in that ADT van, right? And then when I got to see Dad, between 2005 and 23, I knew he was BTK. He's always known he's BTK, but we had never once talked about it, ever. He would not talk about it in letters. And all of a sudden, I was like, I am here due to cold cases involving BTK. And he was like, oh crap. Because it was like, he wanted to talk reunion. He even wanted to talk Koberger. And I was like, and
really?
like your show. And I was like, well, we'll talk about it for a minute, Dad, but we have other things to discuss.
Now, you can't share a lot of what's going on.
Right.
Is there anything that you can share about what he told you, or is that off limits?
I'm running through my head what we've talked about. I think it's more just in a general, we discussed Cynthia Kinney's case. We discussed Shauna Beth Garber's case. You know, I was asking for like I was curious about things like, okay, where was like Dolores Davis like placed, like her body, because there's been some debate if you go Google it, things like that, because if you can ask him something he knows and I know, then I can get him comfortable like to draw me a map. After our first conversation then, I said, okay, Dad, I said, I'm okay with it. I'm not obviously okay with what he did. I never will be okay with what he did, but I had to let him know I had dealt with it. I was okay with it. We were fine. I said, I love you, but this is out of my hands. Okay, law enforcement's involved here. This is out of my hands. If you have not done anything more, I will protect you, and I will try to prove that you've not done anything more. But I said, if you have, I'm personally coming back in here and nailing you to the wall.